A lone girl lies broken on the ground next to a wrecked carriage. This is the start of her story, and it's the journey of how she uses light magic to change an entire nation. As she lies there bleeding out, she thinks about how she doesn't want to die yet. She knows she has to find a way to let someone know where she is. She reaches her hand up with the last of her strength and casts a light spell, but realizes a tiny spark isn't going to cut it. She needs to put way more into it to be seen. Pushing past her limit, she sets off a massive flare and prays that anyone nearby can see she's right there. And just then, a guy nearby catches the signal and yells for his group to start searching the bottom of the cliff. Rewinding a bit, her name is Lilyrus. She was born as the older of two twins into a high-ranking noble family, and by the time she was 3, everyone loved her because she had so much magical power. But things changed fast. When she turned 8, her parents completely turned on her once they found out her magic was the light attribute. Lilyrus's parents yell that a failure like her belongs in the attic and should just work as a servant, treating her like garbage, while her younger sister gets engaged to the first prince at age 15. A year later, Lilyrus gets into a bad accident on the way to some arranged marriage, but then everything shifts to a memory of a past life where she died a totally lonely death. It's a lot to take in, so she stops for a second to process what's happening. Waking up in bed, Lilyrus thinks back to that last vision and tries to figure out what it was, feeling a sudden realization hit her as her eyes go wide. She finally gets it. Those weird flashes were actually memories from her previous life. And looking around the fancy room she's in, she wonders where she even is. It's way too dark to see anything, so she tries to use her light magic, and as the room glows, she's shocked she can actually use magic and realizes she's really alive. Lilyrus sits up in bed and starts to piece everything together, remembering that she was actually on her way to marry into a duke's family when she fell off that cliff, and just as she's thinking, a maid comes in and calls her madam. She looks totally relieved. Martha is standing there with tears in her eyes, telling Lilyrus she's finally awake, and she says thank goodness while grabbing Lilyrus's hands to make sure she's okay. Lilyrus just stares back with watery eyes, thinking about how warm the woman feels. Martha gives her a big smile and officially welcomes her to the Duke of Ashland's estate, then introduces herself as the person who's going to be taking care of her from now on. Lilyrus gets all excited realizing this is her brand new home, but then she stops when Martha calls her madam again. It leaves the girl looking pretty confused about her new title. Lilyrus looks a bit confused and asks who exactly this madam person is, clearly not realizing. Martha explains that Master Alfred was so head over heels at first sight that he didn't wait and held the wedding immediately. The maid smiles and says it's all thanks to how charming Lilyrus is, but that doesn't really help, because Lilyrus just stands there with her mouth wide open, completely shocked by the news. She can't believe the whole ceremony took place while she was fast asleep and totally out of it. Hold up! Smash like and subscribe for more hidden manga gems. Now, I dare you to comment, I'm loving it. I bet most of you won't do it. Alright, let's continue. Her mind starts racing, wondering how any of this is legal without her signature, the vows, or even exchanging rings. Then she realizes the worst part. She might have lost her first kiss while she was unconscious, which is honestly a nightmare for her since she's just a normal girl who had big dreams for her wedding day. Martha tries to change the subject, asking how she's feeling after being knocked out for 3 straight days. And then she uses a bit of water magic to fill a glass, trying to help Lilyrus calm down. The maid reaches out and hands over a glass of water, telling Lilyrus that here it is, which completely catches Lilyrus off guard. The maid mentions she doesn't have much magic but tells her to just ask whenever she needs a drink, so Lilyrus starts downing the water as fast as she can. She lets out a huge sigh of relief, saying it's her first drink in 3 days, and she can feel it soaking into her system while she looks down at the glass with a peaceful smile. She thinks about how her deep wounds are totally healed now and realizes just how amazing recovery magic actually is. And seeing her feeling better, the maid turns back to ask if she's up for eating something. She offers to go find something light that won't be too heavy on her stomach, and Lilyrus watches her head toward the door, making sure to call out a quick thank you. Sitting there alone, Lilyrus starts to get her memories back, remembering that magic is a huge part of this world. She recalls how certain powers are valued, like how merchant houses are always looking for people with water and ice magic for their business, and how the nobility obsessed over fire magic for its power, while soldiers preferred wind magic for the advantage it gave them in a fight. In this world, earth magic is great for defense and exactly what farmers want, but it's just the start of how people are judged as they look at the holy attribute, a rare healing power that everyone absolutely loves and treats like a huge deal. But for Lilyrus, it's a different story. Having the light attribute is basically considered a total waste of time, and she can't even use it to fight. All she can really do is stand there and glow like a human flashlight. Because of her attribute, even her own parents treated her like she was completely useless and good for nothing, meaning it was a constant grind of being compared to her sister, who happened to be born with that rare holy magic everyone wanted. Then there's her fiancé, Lord Alfred. He's the Emperor's half-brother who got sent away just to keep things quiet with the first prince. But since he's technically royalty, his wife had to be a noble, which is the only reason Lilyrus was even in the conversation. Eumeria rubs it in, telling her she's lucky to even get a match, even if it's just a dud duke in a dud territory, so the carriage heads out moving along the cliffside road toward the duke's land. The memory hits hard, the carriage went flying right off the cliffside, and Lilyrus is just glad to be out of her old house. She figures as long as she gets fed 3 times a day and doesn't get treated like garbage, she's doing just fine. She clenches her fists with a new sense of hope. Getting the memories of her past life back was a total win because now she actually knows what she's doing. A ball of energy forms right in her hands, her magic is light. It's pretty simple once she figures it out. By just tweaking her mana levels, she can make the light as big or as bright as she wants, and she's realized that this power isn't actually useless like everyone said. Back in her old world, light was everything for tech and watching videos. Even if she can't use it for her fan hobbies here, it's still powerful stuff. The maid walks in carrying a tray, looking really relieved. She tells Lilyrus she's just so happy to see her finally looking like herself again. She sets the food down and lets her know it's just some bread porridge and chilled peaches for now. Lilyrus can't even believe how nice everyone is being. The maid just smiles and says there's plenty more in the kitchen if she wants second. As Lilyrus takes a bite, she starts tearing up because the food has such a gentle taste, and Martha totally panics, calling out to her and asking if she's doing all right. Lilyrus just gives a small smile through her tears and says she's fine, she's just really relieved to be there. Martha looks at her with so much pity, saying how terrifying the whole ordeal must have been for her, but she reassures Lilyrus that she's safe now as long as she's in the manor. Lilyrus can only manage a quiet thank you. Martha tells her to just focus on getting some good rest for the rest of the day. So Lilyrus lies there thinking about how lucky she is to have a soft bed and such a kind maid helping her out. She realizes that there's no one left to hurt her anymore and feels like her life is finally starting to look up. She can't help but feel a huge rush of excitement about everything. It doesn't even matter to her that people call her power a trash attribute, it's still magic, and that's all that counts. Lilyrus lies in bed dreaming of the future. She wants to set up a huge Christmas tree with tons of lights when it snows, thinking it could even become a famous spot for couples to hang out. She's so hyped that she can't even wait for winter, but the real goal is finding a bias to swoon over, hopefully someone with a lot of muscle. Morning hits the Duke's massive estate, and the whole place looks incredibly peaceful for now. Lilyrus jumps up and shouts for her status window to open, hoping for some RPG-style powers. But it looks like this isn't that kind of world after all. Later on, she heads to the door because she's feeling pretty thirsty, but stops when she hears a maid talking in the hall about the master finally waking up. The maid sounds really upset, saying how much she pities the master for his current situation. She goes on about how he's out there risking his life killing monsters for the country, so she wonders why he's being forced to deal with such a nuisance of a wife. Lilyrus stands there completely frozen. In the hallway, one maid tells the other to stop crying because her husband is still out there risking his life for them, and Lilyrus just stands behind the door listening to everything. She doesn't say a word, but it's pretty obvious to her that the maids are basically just standing there insulting her. She realizes their complaints probably just come from how much they care about Lord Alfred, and judging by how they talk about him, it sounds like her new husband is actually a really good guy. The maids keep going, wondering why the older sister is so useless while the younger one, Eumeria, has holy magic, making Lilyrus pull away from the door because being compared to her sister, even in this new house, is getting to be way too much. She flops down and cries into a pillow, wishing she had a favorite character or even a fluffy pet to obsess over, since honestly she's just really lonely and wants someone to comfort her right now. Suddenly the door opens and Martha walks in. She greets Lilyrus and apologizes for the interruption. Martha shows up with a smile and tells Lilyrus that a letter just came in from her husband, which completely catches Lilyrus off guard. But when she opens it and reads that he'll never love her, Martha just stands there totally shocked. The letter goes on to explain that the whole marriage was just a royal order he couldn't turn down, and he even says he's really sorry about it. It turns out he's asking her to just hang in there and deal with this for the next 3 years. Lilyrus stares at the paper, wondering if he's basically suggesting they have a white marriage, since it turns out a marriage can be cancelled if nothing happens for 3 years, and since Alfred is only 20, he'd still have plenty of time to find someone else and have an heir later on. Thinking about her grumpy dad and her sister Eumeria makes one thing very clear: she absolutely does not want to go back to her parents' house. She decides she'd much rather find a job right here at the estate than go back there, and she hopes Lord Alfred can help her find some work, while Martha just watches her looking worried. Martha starts crying, saying there's no way her husband wrote something like this in the middle of a war, and Lilyrus is just confused, wondering if the letter really came from such a crazy situation. She starts to realize what this all actually means. Lilyrus starts to think that maybe this whole wedding plan was just his way of making these next 3 years go by faster, and it hits her that he's actually doing all of this just for her sake. She thinks about how much the servants clearly love the guy and decides right then and there that he's definitely a good person. Lilyrus looks at the letter and tells herself that even if she isn't loved and never will be, things are looking up because she's just so happy that Lord Alfred is being this thoughtful about her situation. She looks up with a bright smile and calls out to Martha, catching the maid's attention to explain that after 3 years of a marriage where nothing happens, she and Alfred will just be getting a divorce. She's actually excited, saying she'll have 3 years of total freedom in the estate to find a new way to live her life. Lilyrus leans in with a big grin and asks Martha to stop calling her Madam and just use the name Lily Ollies instead, but Martha looks completely heartbroken, asking if she's really okay with a future that ends in a divorce. Lilyrus is all fired up, shouting that a woman's happiness isn't just about getting married, and she thinks back to her past life where she was just a single, unpopular otaku who was actually perfectly happy. The next day rolls around and Lilyrus tells Martha she wants to head into town immediately, which totally catches the maid off guard. She explains that she needs to start planning for life after the divorce, specifically finding a way to make her own money. Martha just stands there, completely floored by how resilient the girl is being despite everything. Lilyrus doesn't waste any time and gets ready to head out, but Martha gets worried, asking if she's really going out in those clothes since they were actually Lord Alfred's when he was a little kid. Lilyrus just says they're perfect for moving around in. Just then, a boy named Kai walks in saying he was supposed to guard the madam, but he looks at Lilyrus and asks who the stranger is, leading to Martha quickly trying to clear things up, telling Kai that this girl is actually the madam. Kai is completely thrown off seeing Lilyrus in those old clothes, trying to wrap his head around her being the madam. The kid looks her up and down, asking if every woman back in the royal capital actually dresses like that, which Lilyrus plays along with, jokingly telling him that this is actually the absolute peak of high fashion right now. Kai doesn't doubt her for a second, saying he totally believes her and thinks the whole outfit looks really cute. He starts geeking out about how cool the capital must be, while Lilyrus just thinks about how the kid is way too sincere for his own good, almost like a puppy. She eventually admits that the whole fashion thing was just a lie, which sends the poor kid into a total state of shock. But he gets over it pretty much instantly, telling her they should just get going so he can show her around town. As she follows him, Lilyrus realizes he's a really straightforward guy, basically the group's fluffy mascot. They finally make it to their destination and Kai leads the way inside, announcing that they've reached the guild. Lilyrus steps through the door, but she suddenly stops, getting the weirdest feeling that someone in the room is watching her. Lilyrus looks up at the guy from the guild, who recognizes her right away and asks why she even showed up, making everyone freeze for a second. He just stares her down, while she stands there completely shocked that he knows who she is. The guy leans on the counter, asking if she's only there to complain about something, which leaves her totally lost. But then he turns his attention to Kai, demanding to know what he was thinking by bringing her to a place like this. Watching the two of them, Lilyrus starts to wonder if Kai is actually being interrogated, and then a wild idea hits her. She watches them talk and can't help but wonder if these two are actually a couple. The vibe between them is just too much. To her, this guild guy is the perfect example of the bossy, arrogant type of hottie, while Kai is definitely the cute, puppy dog type. She's basically losing it over how well they fit together, and she starts giggling to herself, wondering if the guy is just jealous of her and if she can make them both her favorites. As Kai keeps trying his best to talk to the guy, Lilyrus just watches from the side, thinking about how much she probably looks like a lover caught in the middle. The guy at the counter finally gives in, but he's still confused. He tells her fine, but if she's not there to complain, then he wants to know why she's dressed up like that, since the whole outfit looks out of place. Lilyrus doesn't hesitate and tells him with a huge smile that she's actually there to register as an adventurer. But the second the words leave her mouth, the guy just starts losing it. He covers his face and starts laughing uncontrollably, while Lilyrus just stands there looking completely confused, and then he keeps going until he's basically in tears. He can't believe what he's hearing and asks if she's actually serious about this, because he honestly thought her outfit was some kind of joke or a dig at him. He asks her if she's really wearing that stuff on purpose, which makes Lilyrus start to second-guess everything. She wonders to herself if her clothes are actually that weird and has no idea what he means by her trying to take a dig at him. But then the guy's tone completely shifts. He looks at her and casually mentions that he actually really likes the look, and that one comment sends Lilyrus into a total tailspin. She starts freaking out internally, thinking about how that was such a smooth move, and her heart starts racing like crazy when he reaches out to pat her on the head. She realizes she's totally the type of girl who falls for head pats over anything else, so she has to snap herself out of it. She jumps back and yells at him to wait, reminding him that she's technically a married woman and shouldn't be getting close to other guys like this. Lilyrus starts to explain that she's already married, but Red just cuts her off. He decides he doesn't need to hear it and tells her to never mind because he's actually the guild master. He introduces himself as Red and offers to walk her over to the reception desk himself, which gets her registered quickly. The receptionist looks over the papers and confirms that Lilyrus has an affinity for light magic, and she just awkwardly agrees, but the other adventurers in the room immediately start talking behind her back. They're saying it's impossible to be an adventurer with light magic and that she won't find any work, and Lilyrus hears every word of it. It hurts to hear them calling her power a garbage affinity just like everyone else always did, so she has to toughen up. She grips her registration papers and tells herself that she's not going to let a little trash talk get her down. Then she notices something else written on the request forms. She gets a little spark of hope seeing that there's more than just one option available, although the pay is pretty much non-existent. One of the guys mentions the reward is only a single copper coin, which is honestly just a joke, so the receptionist gives her a fair warning. She tells Lilyrus to be smart and not sign up for too many jobs all at once, since if her mana runs dry and her light magic fades out in the middle of a task, there's going to be some serious penalties involved. Lilyrus looks at the request and gets a bit nervous, thinking that a job like this might be a lot, but she realizes this is actually something she's pretty used to. She spent every single night back at her family's house doing this exact thing, since her parents were always demanding. They'd force her to keep every single light in the mansion running for 12 hours straight, and they even made her light up the whole yard too. Thinking about that makes her realize she's more than ready. She gets a huge smile on her face and tells herself she can definitely pull this off, then she starts feeling really confident. She figures the workload isn't even that heavy compared to what she's used to, and even thinks about taking on every single request at once. But while she's looking through her papers, she hears some movement and spots a couple of kids hiding nearby. A little girl is curled up on the floor crying. She's sobbing about how their job for the day got canceled and she's totally starving, which makes her brother try to act tough. He tells her there's nothing they can do about it, but seeing them struggle like that completely breaks Lilyrus's heart. She doesn't even hesitate. She holds out her form and tells the staff she wants to register for the job right now, specifically for today, and the mother is so relieved she can't thank her enough. She admits they almost never get anyone with light magic to take these jobs, so Lilyrus is a total lifesaver. The rescue leader stares her down, asking if she finally gets why light magic is a problem and if she really thinks she can be an adventurer with it. Lilyrus looks right back at him and asks if he's trying to say she's useless, even though this magic is everything she has, but she knows better. She thinks about how light doesn't just make things bright. If you focus it, you can blind people, and if you shape it, you can make tools. She realizes her magic has so much hidden potential, and as she clutches her chest, she tells herself that it all depends on how you use it. She's convinced her power is capable of way more than people think, so the guy just looks at her, sounding skeptical as he asks if she's seriously planning on making a living off just that. Lilyrus doesn't back down. She yells out that she's sick of hearing people call light magic useless, and then the guy just laughs. He leans in close with a smirk and tells her she's actually a pretty interesting person, leaving him to just tell her to give it her best shot as he walks off, and later the scene shifts back to the massive mansion where Lilyrus has been staying. Martha is right there to welcome Lilyrus back with a big smile, asking how her trip to the guild went, and Lilyrus happily tells her that registration went great, and she even met the guild master, which completely catches Martha off guard. Lilyrus starts to mention how the guy was a little weird, but she has to stop when she sees Martha just dropped her bucket and spilled water everywhere. Martha looks pretty shaken up as she asks if the guild master really didn't say anything else to her, leaving Lilyrus feeling a bit confused, though she does mention that the guy seemed to think she was someone else. Martha tells her she gets it, but then gives her a serious warning that she shouldn't bring up the guild master while they're inside the mansion. Lilyrus starts to freak out internally, wondering if all this drama is happening because everyone thinks she's Kai's lover and things are getting way too real. She stands there thinking back to her conversation with the guild master and remembers how he questioned if a light magic user could even make it as an adventurer, which makes her realize that while she can't do much yet, she just needs to work a whole lot harder to figure out her magic. Lilyrus stands in the middle of the room, wondering if she can actually change how bright her light is, and thinks about how this power reminds her a lot of the electricity from her old life. She remembers that LEDs used to save a ton of power compared to normal bulbs back then, so she decides to try making an LED bulb with her magic to keep her mana use low. It works perfectly, and she cheers about finally pulling it off while the room glows bright. Martha hears the commotion and walks in, asking Lilyrus if everything is okay, and stops at the door as the magic starts buzzing loudly throughout the area. Martha is totally blown away by how bright it is, saying it feels like daytime, though Lilyrus admits she's actually holding back. Seeing how well it works, Lilyrus gets a huge smile and suggests they just light up the whole house. Martha gets excited too, saying she can finally clean all those hard-to-reach spots, which is news to Lilyrus. Martha is totally shocked by the idea, asking if Lilyrus really means they're gonna light up the whole house and the magic spreads, making the whole room glow while Lilyrus stands there looking proud of her work. But Martha still looks pretty worried, asking her if it's even safe to be burning through that much mana so fast. Lilyrus just gives her a huge, happy smile, saying she's totally fine and just wants to make things easier for everyone working there. She's feeling good about it and tells Martha they should keep this momentum going to get the rest of the place finished, but Martha looks a bit overwhelmed, reminding her that the mansion is actually huge and covers a ton of ground, so she suggests bringing in her daughter Sarah to help out, since the girl can use light magic too. Lilyrus gets super hyped about that, telling Martha to bring her over right away since they could even do some magic research together. A 13-year-old girl named Sarah shows up looking really shy, asking if they needed her, while looking up at Lilyrus with big, watery eyes. Seeing how nervous the kid is, Lilyrus can't help but think she looks just like a scared little bunny. Lilyrus pulls the girl into a tight hug, thinking about how much she wants to protect her, while Sarah looks up and asks why she's crying. The kid just stares back with wide eyes, softly calling out to her as she realizes how much Lilyrus actually cares. Sarah starts to get emotional, explaining that lighting up the lamps in the mansion used to be her specific job, but as she looks down the empty hallway she sees that almost every single room is already glowing with light, and it makes her spiral, worrying that she might not be needed around the house anymore, so she begs Lilyrus to let her keep working. Lilyrus's eyes go wide and she quickly shuts that idea down, telling her that's not it at all, and she grabs both of the girl's hands, telling her it's actually the opposite and she wants her to stay by her side forever. She goes on to explain that she's been looking for someone to help with light magic research and asks if Sarah will be her assistant. Sarah can barely believe it, asking if she really gets the job, feeling overwhelmed that someone would want her help even with her light magic. The girl starts crying happy tears, promising right then and there that she'll devote her whole life to serving Lilyrus. Lilyrus smiles and lets the girl know she doesn't need her for life, just for the next 3 years or so. She explains that she's actually in a white marriage right now, which leaves Sarah standing there feeling pretty confused about what that even means. Looking out at the massive estate, Lilyrus mentions her plan is to leave this place and finally be free once those 3 years are up. The kid gets all teary-eyed again, barely able to process the fact that their time together already has an expiration date, but Martha steps in with a broom to break the mood, saying it's time to get some cleaning done, which catches the girl totally off guard. Martha starts leading the girl away so they can get to work, telling Lilyrus she needs to head back and get some actual rest. As they walk off, Lilyrus mopes a little bit to herself, really wishing she could have stayed out a bit longer to keep working on her research. The girl can't help but laugh as they leave, telling Martha that the madam is actually way more fun than she expected. Down the hall, another maid is peeking around the corner, looking completely stunned as she stares at the glowing corridor. She stands there in shock, wondering if it's even possible that the madam managed to light up every single one of those lamps all on her own. The dark-haired guy and the other maid just stand there in total shock. The man can't even wrap his head around how much magic power Lilyrus is actually hiding. Outside, the entire mansion is glowing like a beacon in the middle of the night. It's so bright that nobody there has ever seen anything like it. And meanwhile, back at the Marquis estate where Lilyrus's parents live, the people there are getting blinded by the light too, wondering what on earth is happening. Lilyrus's father is losing his mind in his office, pointing at the huge stacks of documents and yelling about how much paperwork he still has to finish. One of his servants looks up from the floor and explains the problem. They can't actually get any of this work done at night because it's way too dark to see. The servant points out that this is basically his own fault, since he fired every single light magic user just because Lilyrus was around back then. The father completely snaps at that, yelling at the guy to shut up because he doesn't want to hear the truth about his mistakes. He stands by the dark lamp and barks out orders, telling them to get a job posting up immediately so they can find some new light magic users to hire. The scene shifts back to the night of the rescue, where Alfred is standing over Lilyrus's body near the wreckage, realizing right then that he didn't want to lose her. He looks down at her face and admits to himself that he doesn't really know why, but that feeling hit him the very first moment he saw her lying there. Alfred thinks about how he's just a problematic marquis these days, but it goes deeper than that. He was actually a prince born to the king's concubine, constantly targeted until his brother took the throne and kicked him out to this land. He looks at his hand, wondering if a guy with a past like his could actually be the one to make Lilyrus happy while he stands over her unconscious body. Flash forward to a bright morning in the city, where Lilyrus is up and greeting Martha. She's looking super cheerful and tells everyone she's heading back to the guild again today, and she asks Martha to get a gold coin ready from her budget, which Martha says she'll handle right away. Kai is right there with her, totally hyped to get moving on some light magic research. They head over and Lilyrus calls out as she opens the door to go inside, but Alfred is already there and looks pretty surprised, asking her why she's showing up yet again. Lilyrus gets a good look at Alfred's build and she can barely even speak. She's just staring at his chest like she's found a masterpiece, telling him his muscles and balance are basically god tier and totally her type, which makes Alfred freak out a bit. So Lilyrus panics and starts waving her hands, yelling that she's not actually in love or anything. She keeps rambling about how she's a married woman, and there's no way she'd fall for the guild master, finishing it off by shouting that it's absolutely not happening with a huge smile on her face. Alfred just stands there looking completely exhausted by the whole conversation, muttering to himself that this can't be real. He looks at her and thinks about how he's actually her husband, wondering how she'd even react if he just came out and said it. Suddenly, some loud footsteps head their way, someone is asking what all the commotion is about, and this huge guy shows up and starts flexing, telling Lilyrus that his muscles are actually pretty great too. He points right at her while she looks totally confused, asking her if she wants to go out on a date. Lilyrus looks at the huge adventurer and lets him down easy. She tells him she's sorry, but she just can't get behind those muscles because she thinks it looks like he's only been hitting the gym for his upper body. She points out his legs are way too skinny and explains that if he wants to actually mix speed with power, he really needs to start toning those legs up too. She admits his arms are pretty impressive, but she keeps going, telling him that he really needs to balance things out by training his lower body, leaving the guy crushed while she explains that's exactly why he's not her type at all right now, which makes Alfred lose it and start laughing in the background. Alfred agrees that her reaction sounds about right, then sarcastically tells the buff guy he's sorry for his loss. Suddenly, another voice pipes up from the side, catching both of their attention as they turn around to see this older guy with a scar on his face smiling. He tells Lilyrus she really knows what she's talking about, making her wonder who he even is. The man introduces himself as Garuda, the former guild master, and as soon as Lilyrus sees his frame, her eyes literally turn into stars. She totally loses it, shouting that she absolutely loves his physique and calling him a total muscle god, while Alfred just stands there yelling at her to cut it out. Garuda laughs and asks Lilyrus if she's a fan of his muscle, while Alfred just stands there looking annoyed, but she says she mostly loves the potential for them to grow even bigger, which makes Alfred snap. He grabs her by the shoulders and yells that in 10 years he'll be just as huge as that guy, caught up in the moment while Garuda just smiles and says he'll take over training all these scrawny guys himself. The buff guy from earlier gives a thumbs up, totally hyped to learn from Garuda, while Lilyrus looks on with stars in her eyes and Alfred just grumbles in the back. Everything stays pretty chill outside the guild building as the sun shines down on the street. Lilyrus gets fired up and leans over the counter, telling the staff she's going to take on every single job listed for the day, but Alfred tries to cut her off, warning her that doing something like that is going to cause some issues for everyone else. She explains that light magic quests usually pay next to nothing, so she's decided to offer a large copper coin and a meal as a reward instead, promising that everything will be fine because she's going to give the other light magic kids an even better request herself. And the kids standing nearby just look at her, completely confused by the crazy offer she's making. A group of kids and some adults gather in a classroom, waiting to hear what's going on as Lilyrus stands at the front with a huge smile, thanking every one of them for showing up. She tells the crowd she's been doing some research on light magic and needs anyone with that same power to help her out. But she gets the whole place set up at a crazy speed, moving so fast she's basically just a blur while a young boy looks down, sounding pretty bummed out as he asks if useless people like them can actually do anything to help. Lilyrus immediately shuts that talk down, leaning in to tell him that they definitely have a purpose and aren't useless. She asks the group if they know what the bread they eat is made of, and a kid chirps up that it's wheat, so she points out that you absolutely need light to make that wheat grow big and strong. She explains how everything grows way better in the sun than in the shade, and then tells them that they're the only ones who can actually make that sunlight, proving that light magic isn't useless at all. Lilyrus continues her lesson, explaining that there are plenty of different types of light besides just sunlight, some that even stay bright longer than the sun itself. So one of the boys looks up in total disbelief, asking if that's actually true. Lilyrus just gives him a confident nod and confirms that it really is, but she doesn't just talk about it, she actually shows them. She holds out her hand and creates a glowing orb, calling the spell lead, while the little girl next to her is completely blown away, saying how bright it is. Lilyrus just laughs a bit, clearly happy to show off what she can do. Then the boy realizes something even crazier, pointing out that this new light uses way less mana than the sunlight spell did, which totally shocks the girl. Lilyrus gets fired up, telling them that there are all kinds of ways to make bright light without using much energy, and that there's still so much more they can learn. She stands before the whole group and lays out the plan, saying she wants to check everyone's magic levels first since that's what today's request is all about. To get things moving, Lilyrus holds up her hand once more and lets the sunlight spell shine bright as a starting point. So she encourages the whole group to give it a shot too, telling everyone to try letting their own magic out just like she did. And all the kids raised their hands together, casting sunlight at the same time and filling the entire room with a massive wave of light. Lilyrus decides they should move the lesson into the hallway since 12 people casting sunlight all at once is way too bright to handle. So the group heads out, and an hour passes before one of the kids notices their sunlight spell is finally starting to flicker and fade. The light eventually blinks out of existence, and just like that the spell is totally gone. Lilyrus is actually pretty impressed, telling the kids that keeping a sunlight spell going for a full hour is a really solid achievement. She tells them that with that kind of talent, they could even find work doing lighting for local shops. And one of the boys looks up at her with huge eyes, asking if she's actually being serious about them getting jobs. Lilyrus promises him it's the truth, explaining that if they can manage an hour of sunlight, then switching over to her LED method would make it easy for them to keep the lights on for an entire day. The kids can't even believe it. Moving on, another hour passes while the kids keep practicing their new magic skills, and then one boy stares at his hands in total shock, realizing his magic light is still glowing bright even after all this time. One of the boys is totally floored, saying he can't believe he kept the sunlight spell going for 4 whole hours, and the girl next to him is just as hyped, noticing her mana has definitely grown since she started. Another girl chimes in that hers is still glowing too, while the rest of the group just stands there in shock at what they've managed to pull off. A young boy looks up with a new sense of hope, wondering if maybe there's even more they're capable of doing, and Lilyrus gives him a huge, encouraging smile, telling him he's right and that there are plenty of things they can achieve together. Watching them, she makes a silent promise to herself that she won't let anyone call light magic useless ever again. Then Red shows up carrying a massive wooden tray, calling out to Lilyrus that he finally made it back with the food. He sets the spread out, letting everyone know they've got 2 meat skewers and 4 loaves of bread each, and the kids absolutely lose it. They stare at the feast with huge eyes, looking like they just won the lottery. One little girl looks at all the food on the table and asks if she's allowed to take some of it home with her. She says she really wants to share some with her sisters, and Lilyrus smiles, telling her that of course she can. Lilyrus tells the kids to make sure they grab their reward money from the guild on the way home, and she lets them know she's counting on them for tomorrow. So the kids head off happily calling her teacher. Lilyrus runs over to the guild counter with some papers in her hand to get things squared away, when the receptionist tells her how great it was to see all those kids leave with huge smiles on their faces. Lilyrus looks pretty moved by the compliment and just gives a quiet, genuine thank you, and she's clearly in a great mood, while Alfred stands nearby looking calm and Red watches the whole scene. While they're cleaning up the plates, Red turns to Lilyrus and asks her how she really feels about Lord Alfred. Lilyrus looks a bit caught off guard and asks him why he's bringing up her husband all of a sudden. She starts blushing and explains that it's not like she hates him, but she hasn't actually met or talked to the guy. Red stays quiet, looking a little worried about the situation while Alfred walks away in the background. Alfred shows up and tells Lilyrus she's working hard, catching her completely off guard while he mentions how they've met once again. Lilyrus is so surprised she can barely get a word out as Alfred gives her a warm smile and says he's just glad to see her looking so healthy and well. He reaches out and gives her a gentle pat on the head, just a simple, friendly gesture that ends with him walking away and tossing a casual "see ya" over his shoulder, leaving Lilyrus standing there totally frozen. She puts a hand over her chest and starts wondering why her heart is racing so fast. She realizes that even though she only knows him as the guild master, he makes her feel really safe. And then it hits her, she's a married woman, and she definitely shouldn't be feeling this way about another guy. Later on, Lilyrus hears some crazy gossip about how some girl used to be Kai's lover, and she ends up totally losing it on Kai, yelling that she's not doing any of this on purpose while he just stands there confused. Alfred tells Lilyrus that her expressions change so fast it's actually pretty funny, and he gets a bit flustered, thinking to himself about how cute she is. Moving on, Lilyrus tries to snap out of it, shaking her head and reminding herself that she's definitely getting a divorce in 3 years. Meanwhile, Alfred walks away feeling down, telling himself she'd never be happy with a guy like him and that he needs to hide how he feels. Later, Lilyrus is hanging out with Sarah, who says she's just glad the kids were happy with what they did. Sarah picks up a huge stack of dishes and tells Lilyrus to wait there while she drops them off. And while she's gone, Lilyrus looks at her light magic and thinks about how this is a solid first step for her research. She really wants to figure out what else she can do with her power, especially if it helps the kids. Suddenly, Alfred shows up again carrying some books and asks why she hasn't headed home yet, making Lilyrus wonder if the guild master is just bored, though he's quick to tell her he's actually got plenty to do. Alfred stands there holding a wooden crate, casually mentioning he just happens to have some free time today. But Lilyrus is barely listening because she's busy daydreaming about the muscles hidden under his armor. Alfred notices her intense look and tells her to stop staring at his body so much, which makes him wonder if he's so ugly that she can't even stand to look at his face. Lilyrus quickly tries to clear things up, telling him it's not that at all and gets a bit carried away, laughing while she tells him his muscles are honestly just god tier. Alfred watches her for a second before his expression softens into a really gentle smile. He leans in close and teases her, saying he could show her the real thing in the flesh, as long as they're in bed. Lilyrus's eyes go wide and she completely loses her cool, shouting out about seeing real muscles. She gets way too excited, leaning in and asking him when this is happening or if they should just do it right now, and she even starts wondering to herself if it would be okay to touch them. Alfred looks like he's starting to regret the joke, so he quickly yells that there's no way and he was just kidding, leaving Lilyrus pouting while Red watches the whole awkward mess from the side. Alfred's face goes totally red and he holds his hand up, admitting that he might not be able to hold himself back much longer. And then he grabs Lilyrus's arms and looks her right in the eyes, calling her name with a serious look that catches her off guard. He leans in even closer and asks her how she would react if he told her that he actually wanted her. But before she can even process the question, he keeps holding her hands and asks what she would even do about it. Lilyrus completely freaks out and starts yelling that he's the absolute worst, leaving Alfred standing there looking confused while she wonders what's going on. She's blushing like crazy and screams that she's a married woman, so she can't believe he'd just come out and say he wants her. She doesn't stop there, she keeps shouting and calls him out for supposedly cheating on his girlfriend too. And she grabs Kai and tells him they're getting out of there right now, leaving Alfred totally stunned in the background as they run off. Alfred stands there alone, looking down at his feet and thinking that a guy like him just isn't the right fit for someone like her. As they walk away, Kai looks over at Lilyrus and tries to speak up, sounding like he's got something on his mind. Kai tries to clear the air, telling Lilyrus that she's totally misunderstood the situation and that the guild master is actually just a guy who likes muscles, making her stop and wonder if she really did get it all wrong, while Kai reminds her about when Alfred said he wanted her, making her realize that maybe he was actually just trying to warn her not to get distracted by that buff guy at the guild hitting on her, leaving her feeling like a total idiot for getting the wrong idea about everything. She realizes she needs to head back and apologize, but then she stops right by the gate because something crazy starts happening, and she can't help but yell in surprise as the entire manor starts glowing right in front of them, leaving her and Kai standing there completely stunned until they hear someone running up and calling out Lilyrus's name from across the yard, and it turns out to be Sarah, who's all smiles and yells welcome home to both of them. Kai looks up at the glowing orbs and asks if this is actually light magic, and Sarah happily tells her big brother that he's right, while she explains that the magic she cast earlier that morning has been hanging around the manor ever since. Kai is totally blown away that Sarah did all of this on her own and tells her how amazing she is, so Sarah just smiles with a huge blush on her face and agrees, but then she turns to Lilyrus and gives her all the credit, thanking her over and over for the help. The scene goes back to earlier that morning when things were just getting started, and Lilyrus starts asking Sarah about the specifics of her power and how much light magic she can actually use, which leads Sarah to explain that she can make a couple of sunlight orbs last for 3 hours, or 30 moonlight ones last for 5. But Lilyrus looks totally confused and asks what she even means by moonlight. She realizes she's a bit behind on the basics because back at her old home, there weren't any other light mages to teach her anything. Lilyrus asks Sarah if she can conjure up just a little bit of magic for her, and the young girl quickly agrees, so Sarah casts her magic and calls out for moonlight, causing small, soft orbs of light to float into the air. Lilyrus looks at the glow with a big smile, saying it really does feel like moonlight is right there in the room, but then she asks Sarah what other kinds of light she can make. Sarah looks pretty confused and asks if there's even anything else, and when Sarah says she doesn't know any other types, Lilyrus realizes the girl just needs a little bit of a push, so she tells Sarah to try imagining something different, like the warm light you'd see coming from a fireplace. Sarah gives it a shot and manages to create firelight, which leaves Lilyrus totally shocked by how quickly she pulled it off. Sarah is so excited that she did it, and Lilyrus keeps telling her how amazing she is for learning a new trick so fast. The magic turns into a soft orange light that looks like a flame but doesn't burn when touched, making Lilyrus realize that since Sarah can change the light's properties, there's a lot more they can do together. Lilyrus gets super hyped and asks if Sarah can use LEDs too, shouting her name with a big grin because Sarah decides to give it a shot and tries to cast the spell by shouting LED. But nothing happens at all, leaving both of them standing there feeling pretty confused about the whole thing. Sarah finally speaks up and asks what an LED even is, saying she's sorry for being out of the loop. So Lilyrus has a total oops moment and realizes that obviously this world doesn't have modern tech like that. She starts geeking out a bit and explains that the name actually stands for light-emitting diode, which only makes Sarah more confused. So Lilyrus tries to say it's like using electricity on stuff from glowing creatures, making Sarah ask if it's just like fireflies. Lilyrus isn't really sure how to answer that and says it's not quite right, but maybe it's close enough to count. She starts stressing out a little, trying to figure out a better way to put it into words for the kid, and to show her what she means, she cups her hands together as a bright, steady light starts to glow between them. Sarah gives it a shot and manages to make the light glow in her hands, asking if she's doing it right, which makes Lilyrus get super excited and tell her that's exactly how it's supposed to look. And Lilyrus starts thinking about the technical side, wondering what the actual mana cost is and how it compares to sunlight magic. She realizes she has the data right there, because looking back at the research results, it turns out the magic consumption for these new LEDs is actually insanely low, coming in at just 1/150th of what regular sunlight magic uses. So Sarah doesn't waste any time and starts putting LEDs all over the mansion. One of the maids sees her working and thanks her for all the help, leading Sarah to explain that since the light won't just disappear, the staff can take as much time as they need to clean. The maids are smiling and tell her how much that helps them out, while Sarah just stands there looking completely stunned by how much of a difference her small magic trick is actually making. Outside, the entire mansion glows brightly against the dark night sky, every window filled with light. Later on, Lilyrus sits down at her desk with a pen and paper, telling herself she needs to summarize all this info before she forgets it, so she starts mapping out the mana points, noting how the LED only uses a tiny bit of MP compared to fire, moonlight, or the massive cost of sunlight magic. Lilyrus looks over the notes on how magic power is usually measured by how long a person can keep a sunlight spell going, with anything over 5 hours being considered a huge amount of mana. She sits at her desk wondering how to make this work for her land. She looks over at the little potted plant sitting on her windowsill and gets an idea. She starts thinking about how even with the new LED lights she made, plants should still be able to grow just fine, which means if they keep the lights on for a long time, they could probably grow vegetables even in the middle of winter. It doesn't stop there, because she figures that flowers blooming in the off-season would probably sell for a lot of money too. She imagines noble women being completely shocked at the idea of seeing fresh flowers in the winter. They'd be so obsessed that they would probably try to buy out entire carriages of them at once and beg for more to be brought to them. Lilyrus pictures Red and Kai cheering about how much money they're going to make from the plan. Back in reality, she's getting herself hyped up, thinking that since nobles love this kind of stuff, it would be the perfect way to move forward. Lilyrus is getting hyped while she writes, thinking about how rare items always sell for a lot of money. But then she stops and realizes there's a pretty big catch to her plan because the markets in the capital and the next town are way too far away. Plus, the snowy roads are too dangerous to travel right now, making it way too likely that the goods would just get wrecked while being moved by carriage. She knows her territory is struggling, and it seems like there aren't even many people around who would buy flowers. So she slumps over her desk and sighs, wondering if there's anything else she can actually do to help. She manages to cheer herself up and decides to just keep moving forward, doing what she can one small step at a time. Looking at the fireplace, she realizes that just by using her imagination, anyone can create all kinds of different light magic. She thinks about her sunlight and moonlight spells, feeling pretty sure that there have to be a ton of other ways she can use her power to turn things around for the land. Lilyrus holds her notebook close and smiles, thinking about how she's actually looking forward to what's coming next. But the scene shifts back to her parents' house, showing off the fancy mansion. Her mother, the Marchioness, is losing her patience while getting ready, snapping at the servants to ask if they're still not finished. One of them tries to explain that the lighting is bad, saying their hands are just stuck in the shadows while they work. The male servant apologizes because he's out of magic, but the Marchioness just yells at them to stop since she's in a rush. Lilyrus remembers how the spotlight only hit her once her younger sister Eumeria got engaged to the crown prince, and back at the mansion, her mother is hurrying along, thinking she needs to get to the venue as fast as possible. When she arrives, someone points out how unique her makeup looks, making her hide behind her fan while she starts to sweat. She finally catches a look at herself in the mirror and stands there completely frozen, unable to believe what she sees. She loses it on her maid immediately, screaming at the girl for having the nerve to give her a face like that. Back at the mansion, the maid is shaking while she tells the Marchioness that she didn't do anything different with the makeup. The butler tries to step in while the maid keeps crying, but the butler just makes excuses, saying maybe the room was too dark and she just mixed up the colors. Right then, the Marquis walks in and sees his wife's face, which makes him lose it, yelling that if the house is too dark, they just need to hire someone with light magic. The Marchioness joins in on the shouting, but meanwhile, Lilyrus is at her new home, noticing it's getting a bit dark in the room. She doesn't mind though and happily heads off to go flip on the lights, while she cheers about how they're still going strong. It's a total contrast to the old mansion staff, who are all standing around looking like they've given up on life. One of the servants finally says what everyone is thinking, that Lilyrus was actually amazing for handling all of this. The Marchioness just stares at her reflection, realizing that their entire perfect lifestyle was only possible because of Lilyrus's magic. She can barely process that the daughter she hated was the one keeping it all together. And the next morning starts with a total disaster as Lilyrus realizes she completely overslept. She starts panicking and running around the house while Sarah watches her, screaming that she has a light magic request she has to finish this morning. She's totally losing her cool and begs Sarah to help her get things done in time, and Sarah doesn't hesitate for a second, telling Lilyrus she'll do whatever she needs. She looks honestly happy just to be helping her sister out. Lilyrus is still a mess, crying while she tells Sarah thanks for stepping up. Sarah just smiles, clearly happy to help out her sister. Kai shows up with some food and says he's got all the details for the requests down. Lilyrus asks him to make sure the kitchen knows she wants the same lunch as yesterday. Then she starts scribbling on a notepad, telling them to handle everything through the LED lights and to just leave them on for a bit while Sarah heads out the door, shouting that she's on it. Lilyrus waves her off and yells that she's counting on her to get things done. As soon as Sarah leaves, Lilyrus panics and says she needs to get moving too, but Martha is right there holding her clothes, telling her she's not going anywhere until she finishes her breakfast. Martha keeps smiling while she explains that Lilyrus has to wait until her guard Kai gets back anyway. So she gives her a look that says she really means it, she has to eat before she heads out. Lilyrus just gives in and says okay, knowing she doesn't have a chance at winning an argument with Martha, and she ends up at the huge dining table, quickly eating her soup so she can finally get her day started. Lilyrus starts stressing out, thinking about how she needs to apologize to Red as soon as she makes it back to the guild. She knows she messed up and cringes at the memory of slapping him over a complete misunderstanding. It gets even worse when she remembers she actually told him she hated him to his face, and she facepalms, wondering if this wasn't a massive screw-up to pull on someone as important as a guild master. She starts imagining people talking behind her back, saying anyone with light magic is useless, and gets terrified that rumors like that will start spreading. But then she snaps out of it and decides she is already on the case to fix things. She looks at Martha with a serious face and says she's going to take over the cooking duties herself. Martha is totally confused and asks if the food wasn't to her liking, which catches Lilyrus off guard. Martha looks a bit down, saying she can't make fancy capital dishes, but Lilyrus quickly tells her that's not it at all. Lilyrus tries to explain that she just wanted to show her gratitude, but Martha is still lost and asks who exactly she wants to thank. Martha is totally floored when she realizes Lilyrus wants to do something for the guild master. She just stands there in shock and thinks the whole idea sounds amazing. She tells Lilyrus that Alfred would definitely be happy to hear about it, but Lilyrus has to double-check if she's really talking about Lord Alfred. She starts thinking that if she plays her cards right with this gift, it might actually help the Duke's relationship with the guild, which leads to her reminding herself that a proper apology is the most important part. Martha doesn't miss a beat and leads her right into the next room while Lilyrus starts low-key panicking, worried that if she makes the master mad, he might kick her out before her 3 years are even up. They step into the kitchen, and Lilyrus is all smiles as she thanks the cooking staff for all the killer meals they've been making lately. She notices the chefs are all bunched up by the window because it's bright and warm, but she starts worrying the ingredients might actually spoil in the sun. It hits her that they probably don't have a choice since it's way too dark to safely cut anything anywhere else. So she points her finger and says, LED. Suddenly, tiny glowing lights start popping up exactly where she wants them. The kitchen staff is completely stunned, just staring at the glowing magic lights Lilyrus summoned while servants start whispering in the background. They're confused because the rumors said she was a villain, yet here she is using magic just to help them out. The head chef, a guy named Cook, steps up and introduces himself, telling Lilyrus he's down to help with whatever she needs. He asks if she's planning on making some kind of dessert for the gift, but then lets her know the kitchen is actually pretty short on sugar, And since sugar is super expensive, Lilyrus starts overthinking what would actually make the guild master happy. She remembers how Red is totally obsessed with sweets. Seeing the tough guild master lose it over a bowl of fruit and cream is a side of her Lilyrus finds surprisingly cute. But then she realizes there's a major problem with that plan. She starts panicking that all that sugar is just going to make Red's muscles go soft and flabby, which gets her all fired up. She clenches her fists, determined to transform those muscles into something legendary. She's thinking about the former master, Lady Garuda, and decides she's going to help make Red's physique even more impressive than that. Lilyrus starts going over the basics of nutrition in her head, thinking about how protein is the absolute key for building muscle, and remembers that if you eat enough high-quality food, your muscles will grow back even stronger after a workout. She looks a bit disappointed though, asking if that means they don't have any beef or pork in the kitchen, but Cook explains that the cows and pigs can't handle the winter weather outside, so they're stuck with just chicken and eggs for now. That's actually perfect since eggs and chicken are top-tier protein sources. Lilyrus gets totally hyped and decides to go for it. She asks the chef if she can use a ton of eggs for boiling, and he's happy to help, handing a whole batch over to her. The pot starts bubbling away as she counts them out: 30 eggs for the kids at the guild, and 3 extra ones just for Red. While the eggs are cooking, she grabs a loaf of bread and starts slicing it up, but notices the bread is pretty hard, so she figures she'll toast the slices to give them a nice, crispy texture. With the main ingredients ready, Lilyrus gets a determined look in her eyes. She knows exactly what the final touch needs to be: mayonnaise. Lilyrus gets focused, explaining that if you want real muscle for fighting monsters, you need plenty of protein and good fats, so she figures she'll just make some mayo herself to get the job done. She gets right to work in the kitchen, looking like she's having the best time ever. The process is pretty simple. She grabs an egg yolk, some vinegar, and a bit of salt, then starts whisking in the oil slowly, and before long she's holding up a finished bowl of mayo while the cook just stands there looking confused. Next, she smashes up all those boiled eggs, mixes in a ton of the fresh mayo, and sprinkles in a bit of salt for flavor. She keeps the momentum going, saying the next step is to shred all that boiled chicken into pieces. The cook is basically in shock, wondering if this is really how nobles spend their time in the kitchen. But he can't help but notice how incredibly fast and steady her hands are while she's working away. Lilyrus finally cheers that it's all done, and right there on the table are 2 massive, perfect sandwiches loaded with filling. Lilyrus shows off her finished work, explaining that one is a salad chicken sandwich with herb salt, while the other is loaded with her fresh mayo and boiled eggs. The cook takes a big bite and thinks it's amazing, noting that despite all the oil it tastes so good he can't stop eating. And Lilyrus is just relieved it worked out, thinking to herself that mayonnaise is definitely the way to go no matter what world she's in. Later on, she heads over to the guild and calls out a hello as she walks through the front door. The receptionist smiles and welcomes both her and Kai, letting them know that all the kids are already waiting in the same room as yesterday. The 2 of them give a quick nod and head over to meet up with the group. A whole crowd of kids is gathered there, looking excited and ready to get started on whatever's next. Lilyrus is a bit surprised by the crowd and asks if there are more of them today, just as a young girl speaks up to get her attention. The girl has 2 smaller kids clinging to her and asks if it's all right if they join the group too, since she heard a rumor that even kids who aren't registered as adventurers could still earn a reward for helping out. Lilyrus gives the girl a big smile and says of course they can join, adding that it's totally fine as long as the kids can use light magic, which leads right into her suggesting they all sit down for some lunch. The kids see the bread and meat and start cheering, so Lilyrus holds up her basket with a wink, letting them know she even brought extra boiled eggs for everyone today. She tells the group they should feel free to take some home if they can't finish it all, making the kids even more hyped for the meal. But the fun gets cut short when Red knocks on the door frame and tells Lilyrus they need to talk. She's caught completely off guard, and standing there with the basket, she starts feeling like things are getting way too awkward. She's thinking about how much she wants to just run away, yet she grips the handle of her basket tight, realizing she's the one who really needs to apologize for what happened earlier. Red looks down and says he gets it, figuring she probably doesn't even want to look at his face right now after the way he acted. But Lilyrus panics and yells that he's totally wrong. Before she can stop herself, she blurts out that she actually wanted to see his muscles way more than his face. Realizing what she just said, she immediately covers her mouth while Red just stands there blushing, not knowing how to react to that. Red looks down, assuming Lilyrus hates him now, but she quickly tells him she just got a few things mixed up, and she really wanted to apologize for how she acted earlier. She starts getting nervous again, and then she just loses it, shouting an apology at the top of her lungs for actually hitting him before. Red tells her it's his bad too, and admits he definitely got a little ahead of himself back there, so he figures there is no way she'd ever fall for a guy like him anyway. Lilyrus agrees instantly, saying she won't fall for him, but she points out that's mostly because she already has a husband waiting for her. Red just stands there dejected as he pauses for a second, clearly about to drop a massive bombshell on her. He looks at her and asks what she would do if he told her that he was actually her husband, wondering if she'd love him then. Lilyrus stands there completely frozen, trying to process the idea that Red could actually be the man she married. She looks at him in total shock, her head spinning as she simply asks why he would even say something like that. Lilyrus starts thinking that a guy with good connections like Red shouldn't be forced into a marriage by his parents, especially with someone he doesn't even like. She thinks he should be free to fight for the woman he actually loves, and then her mind drifts back to Kai. She realizes that things are pretty messy, so she gives him a bright smile and a thumbs up, telling Red she's rooting for him. Red looks completely drained, barely able to process why she's cheering for his romantic failure. Lilyrus suddenly snaps out of it when she remembers why she came over in the first place and presents a large basket, telling him she wants to make things right after the way she acted the day before. She pulls out a huge sandwich and asks him if he's eaten lunch yet, since she went ahead and made a snack for him. Red stands there looking totally blown away. He can't believe his ears and asks her to repeat what she just said. Lilyrus asks again if he's had lunch, but Red cuts her off. He tells her he's not talking about the food, he wants to hear the part before that. She mentions it's to make up for hitting him, but he immediately tells her that's not it. Red looks at the food in his hands and asks if she's the one who made it. Lilyrus tells him that's right, even though she thinks it isn't anything special, but Red gets all red in the face and covers his mouth, quietly telling her thank you. He takes a big bite and says it's actually great. Lilyrus explains that with a sandwich she can eat the meat and the bread at the same time, and Red keeps nodding and chewing, saying how tasty it is while Lilyrus just watches him, happy that it's good. Red gives her a big smile and says that knowing she made it specifically for him makes it taste way better. Lilyrus gets super flustered and just gives a formal reply, trying to be humble by saying the flavor is probably just because of the head chef's special herb salt. She keeps going, saying she didn't do much besides the chopping and tearing of the ingredients. Red licks his finger and tells her that what she did was plenty good enough for him. He gets a curious look and asks if this was her first time cooking, wondering if he's really the first person to eat her food. So Lilyrus snaps back and tells him no way. She actually cooks a decent amount most of the time. Lilyrus realizes something and points out that technically, the very first person to try those sandwiches was the head chef back at the estate. Red gets this intense look, thinking out loud about how he's stealing her first time, which makes Lilyrus snap at him to watch his phrasing. She clarifies the chef only had a tiny taste. She looks away all shy and bashful, admitting that he really is the first person to ever sit down and eat a whole meal she made. She quickly holds out another sandwich, telling him he's gotta try the egg one too, while Red just sits there dazed by the fact that he's her first. Red takes another bite and asks if this is some fancy recipe from the royal capital, but Lilyrus starts to tell him it's nothing like that, so Red asks where the heck it's from then, because he thinks the food is seriously delicious. He's totally loving it, saying he could probably eat this stuff forever, but then he notices the local kids, including Sarah, just staring at him. He sees how hungry they look and realizes he can't just keep it all for himself. So he gives them a big grin and says he's gonna share with everyone, calling the little kids over to get their pieces first. Red sits back and starts handing out pieces of the sandwich to the local kids, who look totally hyped to get a taste of the food. Lilyrus watches him and remembers how he just got done saying he could eat her cooking forever. Yet here he is giving it all away without even finishing it himself. And as she sees him sharing with everyone, she gets all flustered and blushes, thinking to herself about how much she actually likes this guy. She suddenly snaps and tells him he needs to think about his muscles, but Red just says he'll bring a huge amount tomorrow so he can eat every bit she's got, even suggesting he might just skip breakfast to make sure he has room for it all. The idea of him skipping a meal sets her off completely, and she screams at the very thought of it, launching into a massive lecture about how your body needs protein and calories in the morning to keep from breaking down muscle. Red looks totally overwhelmed by the sudden science lesson and begs her to stop because he gets the point. But he's still standing there looking lost, asking what things like protein, calories, or even muscle training are actually supposed to be. Lilyrus holds her head in her hands, realizing her modern world knowledge is slipping out way too fast. She knows people in this world are just trying to survive and don't give a second thought to nutrition, but Red just looks down and quietly says he's sorry for making things awkward. He admits that he never really got a proper education growing up, so he figures Lilyrus must be pretty disgusted by how little he actually knows about the world. But Lilyrus immediately starts panicking and tells him that isn't the case at all. She shouts that education has nothing to do with it, and the only reason she knows all this random stuff is because she's obsessed with muscle. And as Red looks up at her, He apologizes again for just rambling on about his own weird theories and ideas. He starts blushing and gives her a warm smile, telling her that he actually likes that side of her and she shouldn't feel ashamed moving on. He reaches out toward her and says he appreciates how much she thinks about things and how much she wants to help everyone with what she knows. He looks deeply into her eyes and tells her he loves every single bit of her personality, leaving Alice completely frozen as he comes right out and says he loves her exactly the way she is. Red looks her right in the eyes and tells her he loves her, which just gets interrupted immediately because all the kids around the table start jumping up and yelling that they love her too. One of the little girls gives her a huge hug and tells her they all love their big sis Alice, leaving her totally flustered while Red just sits back and watches with a warm smile on his face. Alice eventually gets her head back in the game and points out that going out to hunt monsters without eating first is just asking for trouble. And she wonders out loud if every adventure in the world is really that reckless. Red just shrugs and says that's pretty much the deal. So Alice gives a quick thumbs up and suggests they should start selling boiled eggs right at the guild to make sure everyone's actually eating. Red takes a second to think about it and admits that it's actually a solid plan, and soon after the kids are all done eating, thanking Alice for the great meal as they leave behind nothing but empty plates. The kids are all smiles as one of them brags about making the sandwiches extra special, and Alice just laughs, telling them she's glad they're happy and that she's counting on their help with more experiments today. She starts walking off with the kids, but Red calls out for her to wait. He looks a bit skeptical and mentions people saw her just standing in the hallway for 5 hours yesterday, asking if she even did any experiments. Alice gets a bit defensive and says she definitely did, explaining she was busy figuring out everyone's different abilities, which leads Martha to jump in, mentioning how there's usually a skills exam during the registration process. Alice and Martha share a laugh while Alice explains that light magic users never had anything like that, so it was actually a big help for her. Red gets this look of regret and apologizes, saying he didn't realize she probably had a rough time getting any work until now. But Alice just gives him a bright smile and tells him not to worry since she's setting up strict standards for the future, leaving Red standing there just quietly saying her name as she heads off. Red rubs his face while thinking about how Lilyrus always takes the lead to fix things. She handles everything without ever looking annoyed. And he finds that really reassuring, so he looks her right in the eyes and tells her he wants her by his side forever. Lilyrus's face turns bright red as she repeats those words back to him, wondering what he's getting at. She asks him what that's supposed to mean, so Red explains that Martha mentioned Alice is basically a lifesaver for her. But Alice gets this look like she just figured something huge out. She clenches her fist and asks if he's saying he'll give her a job at the guild once she gets a divorce, and if that's why he wants her around. Red completely loses it and shouts about her getting a divorce. The word alone sends him into a total panic. But Alice realizes she just messed up big time by blurting out her secret plan for her life after the split. She tries to play it cool by yelling that she gets along with her husband perfectly fine, though she'll keep the job in mind, leaving Red standing there just repeating her words back, looking like he has no idea what's going on anymore. Lilyrus looks at Red and asks if he's just having some weird delusion, while Red stays there hiding his face in total embarrassment. She realizes she can't even say much since she doesn't even know what her own husband looks like anyway, but Red manages to pull it together enough to tell her that he's counting on her for what's coming next. Changing the subject, Red suggests they should probably use the basement storeroom for the experiment. Lilyrus sounds a bit curious about the basement, so Red explains that this is an official request from a bigger guild, and because of that, he's going to add a copper coin for every person involved. The mention of extra money makes Lilyrus's eyes literally turn into dollar signs while the kids look on in total awe. Red adds that he also wants to use the light from the experiment to check on the inventory, and he leads the way down, pointing out a door and telling everyone that the spot is further inside. Lilyrus and the kids follow him down the stairs until they finally step into the room, and Lilyrus can't help but shout about how huge the space is. She decides they should leave one of the LEDs on, and Sarah just looks at her like she's a hero, telling her she's amazing for making 7 whole bright lights at once. Red mentions that the glow isn't actually coming from the sun, which shocks Lilyrus because she can't believe how bright it is without any sunlight at all. She realizes she never actually explained what an LED was to them, but Sarah is just standing there completely blown away by how cool the light looks. Lilyrus is busy with the group when Sarah softly calls out her name to get her attention, causing the young girl to beam with pride as she announces that she finished her request for the day. She asks what's next on the list, and Lilyrus just smiles back at her, taking a second to introduce Sarah to the other kids. Lilyrus proudly calls her top student. Sarah stands there looking totally stunned by the compliment, so Lilyrus keeps the momentum going and tells her to take the lead. She asks Sarah to show everyone how to make fire light right now, The top student title really goes to Sarah's head in the best way possible. She gets all fired up and promises she's going to do her absolute best. Kai steps up and tells his big brother to watch him make some fire. He manages to spark a small flame in his palm and asks if he's doing it right, which makes Lilyrus realize that Kai actually has a fire attribute. She leans in to get a better look at his work until the heat suddenly becomes way too much, and she yells out because she accidentally burned herself. Red completely loses it and says they need to fix her hand right now, but Lilyrus tries to play it cool. She tells him she's just going to use some water to chill it out and asks him to keep an eye on the kids. She's standing there holding a glass of water when someone new shows up. A guy says he heard about the accident, and Lilyrus freezes because she knows that voice from somewhere. Lilyrus is totally losing it over Garuda's physique, calling him the god of muscles. He's easily her favorite person to look at, and she honestly thinks his build is so divine she might just pass out right here. But then Red suddenly steps in and covers her eyes, telling her she's not allowed to swoon over anyone else's muscles but his, so Lilyrus starts panicking and asks him what he's even doing, while Red just pouts and Garuda laughs at the whole situation. Garuda offers to give them a hand with whatever they're working on and rallies the rest of the guys to get moving. But everyone completely freaks out when they see the fire light, yelling for someone to grab some water before the place burns down until Sarah smiles and tells them to relax, explaining that it's just a special kind of light and not actual fire. Garuda reaches out and realizes she's right since the flame isn't hot at all. He's pretty much blown away by how cool the magic is. With all the big guys crowded into the small space, Garuda points out that it's getting way too packed in there, causing Lilyrus to try and squeeze her way through the group, politely asking if everyone can let her pass for a second. Sarah looks up at the glowing lights and says they look beautiful just like a festival, while she welcomes Lilyrus back. Lilyrus notices the floating lights too and mentions that Alfred must be there, but she's completely caught off guard and yells out his name. Lilyrus starts looking all over for him and asks where he is, though Red just tells Sarah she's seeing things. Sarah gets all flustered and agrees she must be seeing stuff, then notes how everyone has already learned to make light, so Lilyrus smiles and tells her she must be a naturally gifted teacher. She follows up by saying everyone involved is doing an amazing job. Lilyrus grabs Sarah's hands and gives her all the credit, asking her to keep helping out from now on. Sarah starts getting teary-eyed and happy after hearing those kind words. Garuda gives a thumbs up and asks if she's the one who taught the kids, and Sarah proudly says she did. Sarah smiles and tells everyone she worked super hard as Alice's top student, which really gets Garuda's attention as he pats Red on the head, laughing while he says Alice is on a totally different level if she's the one who taught the kid. Sarah gets all jealous seeing Red getting attention and starts complaining, asking why he's getting headpats instead of her. Lilyrus panics and tries to set the record straight, yelling out that she's definitely not Red's wife. Moving on, someone points at a small flame and asks Alice how long a light like that is supposed to stay burning. Lilyrus holds up two flames to compare them, explaining that if the small one is a 1, then the big one is a 9. She waves her hand a bit and lets them know she's just guessing since she hasn't actually run a real test yet. But she thinks that for a flame of that size, she only needs about half the magic she'd use for sunlight. Red and Garuda both completely lose it, shouting in shock that she can make something that big with so little power. Lilyrus just nods and tells them that with that much energy, the light should stay on for an entire day. One of the guys looks up, completely stunned, and asks if something like that is even possible. Garuda stares at the magic, saying it's brighter than the moon and lasts way longer than the sun. He notes it looks just like fire magic, so he turns to John and tells him to give it a shot. John looks a bit nervous but gets ready to try. John focuses and casts his own firelight spell. Watching the small flame flicker in his hand, Lilyrus watches him and realizes what's happening just as John yells out that he's actually been a light attribute this entire time. She starts thinking to herself, wondering if he only built all those muscles to keep people from calling him useless. She feels a little bad, thinking she might have been rude earlier. Meanwhile, John gets fired up, promising to use his muscles and light magic to make a world where hard workers like her can thrive. He casts the spell again, and this time a massive burst of firelight erupts from his hand, catching everyone off guard. Garuda asks if he can go even bigger, and suddenly the whole place is filled with glowing lights as John really starts showing off Garuda checks to see how his mana is holding up with so much going on. But John just flexes and says he's doing totally fine. Garuda looks over at the group with a big grin and says there's been a change of plans. Lilyrus cheers as Garuda tells John they need to head somewhere else to really test out this light magic. Red picks Lilyrus up and starts carrying her off, making her ask why they aren't just doing the experiment right there. Garuda shouts at Red to stop flirting with his wife and get a move on so they can get started. Poor Sarah stands there crying her eyes out because she really wanted to go along with Mr. Muscles. But the group eventually makes it to a forest where monsters actually show up. and Garuda tells John to fire off his light magic again. John calls out his firelight spell and blasts a wolf monster, sending the thing yelping as the magic hits. Garuda and Red warn him that he's being tricked and that he shouldn't just judge things by how they look, since the monster is already trying to bolt, so Garuda barks an order for John to cut off its escape. John acts fast and drops a pillar of light right in front of the wolf to keep it from running away. Garuda leans in and says he's actually going to touch the magic. While Red just stands there watching him, John focuses on the flickering light magic in his hand, watching it dance like a real flame. Red mentions that the whole plan fails if the monsters realize the light isn't actually hot. Even though it looks like the wolf is burning, John realizes this trick will make combat a total breeze. Garuda tells the guys they should keep the experiment moving, and Damon is totally down for it, so the group heads over to a large warehouse packed with shelves and old supplies. Sarah looks up at everyone and asks what they're supposed to do next. Lilyrus checks in with the group to see if everyone still has enough magic power left to keep going. Martha tells Sarah to start teaching the others about LEDs, which Sarah is happy to do even if the younger kids are completely lost. Lilyrus gets her clipboard ready and says it's time to organize the warehouse, telling Damon they need to check their inventory and figure out where everything is stored. Damon starts the walkthrough, explaining that the sword at the entrance is just a standard piece since all the valuable gear is kept somewhere else. Lilyrus gives Damon a bright smile and tells him he's super reliable, so he should really be the one leading the group. Damon completely panics at the idea, asking if she's serious about him being a leader since he thinks he's just a regular guy who's useless in a fight. She doesn't back down though, telling him that in this warehouse, he's the one who actually knows where everything is, so he needs to have some confidence. She explains that having the right info can flip a battle way faster than just having big muscles, and she looks at him with a warm smile, telling him that everything he knows is his real strength. Lilyrus starts looking around at the messy storage and asks why everything is just tossed into different barrels like this. Damon figures it's just because the barrels are right by the door, making it easy for people to just stab the swords in and go. Lilyrus says the whole setup is way too sloppy and suggests they should put exactly 25 swords in each barrel to keep a clean count, leaving Damon totally speechless. He tries to explain that it's not just laziness, it's just that the back of the room is so dark you can't see a thing once you leave the entrance. And just like that, Lilyrus gets a look on her face like she finally figured out exactly how to fix the problem. Lilyrus feels a bit silly for getting ahead of herself and offers a quick apology, but she decides they might as well go big if they're doing this at all, calling out her lead magic to brighten the place up. As the light fills the room, she realizes she put a ton of mana into it and starts wondering how long it'll actually stay lit, making it the perfect time for a little experiment. She thinks about how great it would be to get paid for this, especially since a long-lasting charge means she wouldn't have to show up every day. She starts doing the math in her head, figuring that since regular light magic usually costs a coin an hour, 3 coins for 8 hours of LED light is a total bargain. Then the reality hits her. 90 coins a month just for light sounds way too steep for most people, and she starts worrying since the shops she saw in town didn't exactly look like they were rolling in cash. It makes her wonder if anyone would actually pay for light magic. Old memories of being told her magic is useless start creeping back in, and she can feel the trauma starting to get to her. She suddenly starts slapping her own thighs as hard as she can, remembering a trick from social media that says hitting your legs 5 times forces your brain to stop overthinking and just focus on the sting instead. Lilyrus slaps her legs and tells herself to snap out of it. She needs to switch gears and stay focused on the task at hand, so she realizes that if this territory doesn't start doing better, her light magic won't ever get a chance to shine, which means she has to come up with some other uses for her power besides just lighting up rooms. Just then, Damon comes running over asking if her legs are giving out on her. She quickly tells him that's not the case, explaining that she just got a little too hyped up, which leaves Damon looking pretty confused as he puts his hands together and starts apologizing over and over again. And he admits that he never expected adventure work to turn out quite like this, pointing out that while everyone says these weapons are for when monsters go on a total rampage, Lilyrus gets the feeling she totally misunderstood things. She asks if these weapons aren't actually meant for buying or selling, and Damon explains they're usually just lent out to new adventurers who are broke, or used for training. Damon explains that these weapons are also kept around for anyone who doesn't have gear to use in an emergency, and Lilyrus stands there looking at the equipment, thinking about how they're meant for everyone living in this place. She finally gets it. These were precious tools kept ready to protect people from monster attacks. Damon mentions how having the room well lit makes a huge difference, which is when he holds up a sword and sees it's rusted and chipped. Even the handle feels loose and ready to break. He says there's no way he would have noticed those flaws if she hadn't made the room so bright. Lilyrus realizes that just being able to see isn't enough, You have to be able to see everything clearly. Just then, Sarah comes running over to tell her that everyone has learned how to use the light magic already, and Lilyrus is so proud, telling the whole group of kids they did an awesome job and that it's great they all succeeded. She tells them the next lesson is learning how to stop the magic, asking them to just imagine the light fading away. Lilyrus laughs and tells the whole group that they're all doing an amazing job. She winks and tells them that since they worked so hard, she's got a reward for them. One of the little girls spots a tiny glow and asks if it's just a small light, but Lilyrus stands in the center of the room and starts popping more lights into existence. The kids lose it when they realize the lights are forming a giant smiley face right above their heads. Everyone is super impressed, shouting about how cool it looks, though Sarah looks a bit confused and asks Lilyrus what happened to the experiment they were supposed to be working on. Lilyrus just gives a thumbs up and says this is actually a legit experiment. She explains it's all about seeing if they can control the light magic freely. She claps her hands together and decides they should end the lesson with a contest. The goal is for everyone to draw whatever they want with their magic while she counts to 10, and she tells them there's no limit on the size or how many lights they use. One girl asks if she's doing it right and shows off a huge flower made of glowing points. The other kids can't believe how good it looks. All the kids are having a blast, running around and cheering as they play with the glowing magic lights. Kai mentions that this magic contest reminds him of the big swordsmanship tournament, which catches Lilyrus off guard as she repeats the name. She immediately starts daydreaming with sparkles in her eyes, wondering if the whole event is just packed with huge, muscular guys. Kai gives her a big smile and tells her that's exactly how it is, so he explains how each territory's knights hold their own trials to see who goes to the capital, though he mentions Sir Alfred skips it every time. Lilyrus gets curious and asks if adventurers are allowed to jump in and compete too, making Kai look a bit confused. She starts thinking about whether the guild master or Lord Alfred would actually win in a fight, which makes Kai pretty nervous. Kai asks her what's on her mind, and she just brushes it off by saying she hasn't really thought about it that much. But she's secretly thinking that Red is probably the stronger one and figures Kai just doesn't want to call his own boss weak. She pictures Alfred as just a regular, non-buff dude and thinks it's a real shame he isn't more muscular. Lilyrus asks if there's any prize money for winning the tournament, but Kai tells her the qualifiers only give out medals. This gives her the idea to offer some prizes for their own little contest, so she starts wondering what the kids would like. She thinks the medal idea is pretty solid and keeps it in mind for later. Since she needs to find some good prizes, she decides to head into town to see what she can find. But first she turns to Sarah and lets her know she should definitely join the magic contest too. Sarah starts to freak out and stammers that she really isn't the artistic type at all, though Lilyrus points out that it doesn't have to be a fancy drawing and suggests she could just try making letters with her magic. The idea of just doing letters makes Sarah feel a lot better, and she happily agrees to give it a try. Lilyrus announces to all the kids that they have 2 hours until the contest starts, so they better start practicing, and then she asks Kai if he'd be down to go shopping with her to help pick everything out. Lilyrus and Kai are walking along when they hear someone call out for her. It's the guy with the mustache, who stops them to say thanks for the sunlight magic she used the other day, adding that he's just happy she's still around. Lilyrus gets all humble and apologizes for any trouble, saying she's still learning how to manage her time properly, but the guy just waves it off, telling her it was no trouble and that everyone is actually really grateful for her help. She tells him it's really no problem at all, but then she starts explaining how the business side of things works, mentioning that the fee usually changes depending on how long a job takes. She lets him know they won't be able to keep providing light for long periods at that same low price anymore. The guy rubs his head and agrees, feeling a bit bad for being so thoughtless about the cost. Lilyrus then clarifies that they aren't even using real sunlight magic for this, but something called an LED. She gives a polite bow and tells him they'll have a standard rate for the service ready soon, so he should definitely place an order once it's official. The guy with the mustache says he'd really appreciate the help, but mentions it'll be a struggle if the price jumps up too much. And he's not the only one impressed, since another guy talks about how great the light was yesterday, calling the LEDs the absolute best. Even a local woman mentions it's way brighter than moonlight, which actually lets her get a ton of work done at night, while a blacksmith nearby admits he'd love to hire Lilyrus every single day if he could. Kai looks around at all the happy people and points out that light magic seems to be a huge hit, so Lilyrus starts thinking they need to find a price that isn't too expensive or too cheap, suggesting a 5,000 yen monthly subscription for a whole house. Kai just stands there looking confused, repeating the word subscription like he has no idea what she's talking about. So Lilyrus gets all excited and explains it's just a service people get to use for a fixed rate every month. She decides they should definitely turn the LEDs into a subscription service, maybe charging 3,000 yen for one room or 5,000 for a full building, which leads to the idea of just charging a flat fee per room for bigger places like mansions or inns. Lilyrus figures that giving people unlimited use of these bright LEDs is the way to go. It's way better than daily payments and will definitely bring in a ton of customers. She starts questioning if 3,000 yen a month is actually a fair price for a regular family, just standing there thinking it over. While walking through town with Kai, she tells him the duchy is going to stay broke unless they start bringing in money from the outside, so she asks him if they have anything else they can sell. The cook looks pretty stressed while explaining that sugar is a total luxury item that most people can't afford, so Lilyrus gets an idea and asks about selling sweets, specifically suggesting they look for something from a cold climate like maple syrup. She gets even more hyped up thinking about the forest, wondering if they could just go out and gather a bunch of wild vegetables to sell. But then she remembers the catch and points out that the forest is actually crawling with monsters, and Kai agrees, telling her it's probably way too dangerous for any normal person to even step foot in there. Just thinking about the monsters is enough to make anyone nervous, especially with huge wolves lurking in the shadows of the trees. Plus, she realizes the winters here are so brutal and snowy that growing any kind of normal crops is basically out of the question. Lilyrus starts realizing that the freezing weather isn't the only thing keeping this place poor. There should be plenty of food like fish, meat, and vegetables in the wild, but the monsters make it impossible to go get any of it. She looks around and thinks about how this place is basically a prison colony, and the problems here go way deeper than she ever expected. Even the mines are completely off-limits because they can't even step inside without being hunted down by monsters. So she stands in the middle of town just watching the people walk by, noticing how rough everyone looks. It hits her that there isn't a single person in the entire duchy who looks like they've had a decent meal in ages. Even after being treated so badly back at the capital, Lilyrus realizes she's actually the healthiest-looking person on the street, and it's honestly frustrating, making her want to find a way to actually make this place successful. She walks through the town thinking about how Alfred does so much to protect everyone, while she feels like she hasn't done anything as the Duchess. She looks at the local staff and figures it's no surprise they all seem so disappointed in her. Lilyrus starts losing it, grabbing her head and groaning about how she's got to take action when her brain is spinning this fast, while Kai just watches her freak out, and she keeps spiraling, complaining that she can't find a single thing to do and has no idea what she's going to use for the contest's grand prize. Kai tries to help her brainstorm, asking if she's looking for something specifically that kids would like. And just then, Lilyrus's eyes light up when she spots a shelf full of wooden bears and snowmen, completely obsessed with how cute everything looks. She stands there blushing with her hands over her face while someone greets her, and as she turns, she sees an older woman sitting behind the counter. Lilyrus is still totally caught up in the vibe of the shop, so she just keeps gushing about how cute the carvings are, which makes the old shopkeeper laugh a little. The woman explains that she actually just gives the carvings away as free gifts to anyone who buys something from the shop. Apparently, her husband carves them since there's nothing else to do during the long winters, but they just can't get anyone to actually buy them. Lilyrus can't believe what she's hearing. She leans in close to a wooden bird, asking how something this well-made could possibly not be selling. It turns out the shopkeeper's husband just does this as side work while they're snowed in during the winter. They just wish they actually had a use for all these carvings since Lilyrus leans in, thinking maybe people would enjoy these like the way collectors display character figures. Though she knows that's a hobby usually reserved for people with cash, she can't help but think it's a total waste to see such amazing skill go to nothing. Looking at the little figures, she realizes that while big-name knights in the capital cost a fortune, wooden versions would only be a few copper coins, and might even catch a noble's eye. Lilyrus peeks over the counter and suggests they try the royal capital, which catches the old lady off guard as she asks for more details. So Lilyrus just lays it out, asking why they wouldn't just go sell them somewhere else if they're not moving here in town. As they keep chatting, Lilyrus notices something else on the counter and tells the shopkeeper that her embroidery is really beautiful too. She leans in to get a better look at the floral pattern, asking what it's supposed to be, and the lady tells her it's actually going to be a bridal veil. Lilyrus thinks to herself that a piece like this is definitely a once-in-a-lifetime luxury, then asks the lady how long it even takes to finish something that detailed. But the shopkeeper just smiles and asks if Lilyrus is planning on marrying the young guy she brought with her. Lilyrus completely loses it, screaming that there's no way and it's totally impossible. She begs the shopkeeper not to say such scary things even as a joke, since she realizes she probably went a bit overboard with the denial. The old lady just laughs it off, asking if the guy she's with is the jealous type, since she thinks that's just a way of showing love, But Lilyrus is just thinking to herself that jealousy is the least of her problem, given she's technically married to a guy whose face she hasn't even seen yet. The shopkeeper gets back to business, mentioning she'll have this veil done in a month, but she won't even touch the next one until next summer rolls around. Lilyrus is pretty confused since it's already summer, and she asks if that really means the next piece is going to take a whole year to finish. She follows up by asking if the lady only does this specific work during this time of year, trying to figure out why the schedule is so weird. The lady explains that the winters get so dark she can't even see the thread colors, which pretty much kills any chance of doing embroidery work. It finally clicks for Lilyrus, and she realizes that the lack of light is the only thing holding the production back. So she points to the pattern and asks how long it would take to put that same floral design onto a small handkerchief. The shopkeeper tells her a single flower takes a day and a full pattern takes a week, which leaves Lilyrus totally shocked by how fast she actually works. Lilyrus starts panicking when she realizes that the handkerchief her sister Eumeria gave to the prince took over a week to finish, making her realize that the shopkeeper's speed is actually insane. But the lady just smiles and asks what kind of use a handkerchief like that would even have Lilyrus gets fired up and tells her that they'll definitely sell, especially to the nobles who love that kind of stuff. The old lady says she has a recommendation for something else and heads for the door, saying the colors are hard to see inside and asking for just a second. She brings out a basket full of beautiful ribbons, and Lilyrus can't help but freak out over how cute they are. The shopkeeper shows off the embroidery and suggests she could even use one to decorate her own hair, which makes Lilyrus start looking through all the options while they're out on the street, getting distracted because she likes every single one she sees. She has to catch herself and remember that she's actually there to buy prizes for the kids, not just shop for herself. Kai points out that a ribbon might be a bad prize if a boy wins, but Lilyrus is still stuck on how nice they look. Lilyrus looks at the ribbons and decides that since she's already there, she really wants to buy something for herself too. She gets a bright idea and says she knows exactly what to get, looking pretty hyped about it. Lilyrus finishes her shopping and skips out of the store with her bag, humming a little tune as she goes. She runs into Red, who looks surprised to see her and asks if her experiment is already over. He mentions that he actually thought Garuda had already taken her away by now, but Lilyrus gets stars in her eyes and asks where Lady Garuda is, while Red just stares at her with a blank look. He pinches her cheek and tells her it's a letdown, but the person she's looking for isn't coming back no matter how much she hopes. Red looks her right in the eyes and asks if she's trying to say that he isn't enough for her. Lilyrus just gives him a flat yeah, which makes Red lose it and yell at her for being so honest. He doesn't back down though, leaning in close to tell her he's going to kiss her right then and there. Red leans in way too close and makes Lilyrus completely lose it. She starts yelling that she has no idea what he's talking about and it's definitely not okay, questioning if he even hears himself right now. Red looks away with a bit of a blush, mentioning something about Garuda being the jealous type, which instantly makes something click for Lilyrus. She shouts out that she finally gets what's going on. She stops to process it and asks him to clarify, wondering if he really tried to shut her up just because she wouldn't stop talking about how great Garuda is. The realization hits her full force and she covers her mouth while blushing, asking if he seriously meant he was going to do that with a kiss. She quickly tells him that if he needs to shut her up, she'd much rather he just use his hands instead. Red tries to jump in and stop her right there, but she doesn't stop, shouting that there's no way she's letting that happen and she'll just stay quiet if he asks her to nicely. Lilyrus pushes him back to get some space, but while she's doing it, she accidentally lets it slip that she actually really likes his muscles too. She holds her hand over her heart and tells him he needs to be careful because she almost caught feelings there, but reminds him that she's a married woman and can't go there. Red decides to just drop the whole thing and play it cool, casually asking her where she's been hanging out this whole time. Lilyrus gets all excited and tells Red she's holding a light magic contest. She even went out specifically to find a prize for the winner and shows off the handmade award, explaining how she had someone combine a simple ribbon with a wood-carved coaster. She points out that it doesn't have a pin, so it's just for display. Apparently, pins were too pricey and she couldn't find a way to stick one to the wood anyway. Red holds the prize up and tells her it doesn't matter because even as a display piece, it's an honor he'll cherish for his whole life. He gives her a head pat and says an honor like that stays with a person, but Lilyrus completely loses it, yelling at him to stop because getting head pats makes her heart flutter way too much. Red starts walking off and jokes about hand-delivering the prize as the guild master Lilyrus just stands there stunned as she finally remembers his actual job. She admits she totally forgot who he was for a second, which just makes Red sigh and shake his head at her. Red flashes a smile and reminds her she's also forgetting that she's his wife. Lilyrus panics, asking why he's bringing that up now and shouts back that it isn't true at all, trying to keep her cool while her face turns bright red. Red just looks back over his shoulder with this smug grin, asking if that's really how she feels while he tells her they should just drop it and head back to the others. Lilyrus follows behind him looking totally freaked out, and she starts chasing him down, demanding to know why he's still wearing that stupid grin on his face. Red gets a little more serious for a second, looking off to the side as he starts to say something else. He points out how bright everything is and mentions that with this much light, she can actually use the whole basement, and Lilyrus just agrees with him, while Red adds that having good lighting is actually a huge deal for what they're doing. He turns to her and asks how many hours someone with a lot of potential can actually keep sunlight magic running. Lilyrus stops to think about it for a second. She realizes he has a point and starts comparing the magic to how an LED works. She tells him she'd need to test it to be sure, but at this brightness level, it should definitely last all day. Moving on, she adds that if someone is really good, they might even be able to keep it glowing for an entire month. Red is completely blown away, asking if it's even possible for sunlight magic to last a whole month while he keeps questioning how that could work. Lilyrus realizes she hasn't actually explained the secret behind her magic to him yet. She holds up a glowing orb and tells him it isn't actually sunlight, calling it LED light instead. So she explains that it's a long-lasting, super bright light that barely uses any of her mana to keep going. Red stares at the glow, noting it's definitely not moonlight or starlight. He wonders if she's discovered a fourth kind of light. Lilyrus says he's exactly right and immediately brings up wanting to start a subscription service for it, but Red just looks at her like she's speaking another language, asking what a subscription even is. Just then, someone calls out to her. Sarah shows up with a huge smile to welcome them back, letting Lilyrus know that everyone is already packed and ready to go. Lilyrus gives her a quick thanks and says she'll be right there to join them. The guys nearby are already geared up with crates and swords, asking what's happening and wondering if the big move is finally starting. Red stops to think for a second before his face lights up, saying he finally figured out a plan. He suggests that everyone should take a quick break from cleaning the warehouse to go watch a light magic contest instead. The guys nearby look pretty surprised by the idea, asking if he's actually serious about a light magic competition. Red tells them things are way more exciting when there's an actual audience, so he's planning to hand over a prize once they have a crowd. Lilyrus is clearly touched by how much he's helping out, giving Red a huge smile and thanking him for everything. Moving on, Red gathers all the kids together and asks if they're ready to get this thing started. He explains that the rule is to draw a picture using light magic before the count hits 100, while Lilyrus checks if everyone is cool with that. The kids are totally into it, cheering and giving a big thumbs up as Lilyrus gets herself hyped for the show. She takes the lead and shouts out for the contest to finally begin. The countdown starts at 1 as a girl creates little sparkles, then hits 2 as Sarah and the other kids start focusing their magic into bright glows. The countdown hits 3 as one of the kids concentrates hard, spreading his arms as bright spots of light magic start to dance around him. The sight catches the guys completely off guard. The dark-haired leader can't believe the kid is actually moving the light at will, while Damon points out that even a fireball is hard to aim at a specific spot. They keep talking about how tough it is to make them all the same size or even change them, especially with so many at once. John is just sitting there on the floor, totally stunned by what he's seeing. The leader rubs his chin and mentions that this level of control isn't something you can just do without a lot of serious training. Lilyrus notices their reactions and mentions that they all seem pretty surprised by what's going on, and she explains that normally, you really can't control magic that freely without a ton of practice. The kids keep working, focused on making their own little glowing shapes in the air, but she's actually really happy with how it's going, thinking to herself that this contest turned out to be amazing practice for everyone's light magic. Once the time is up, she cheers and officially calls out that the contest is over. John and the leader look over at the final results and can't help but be impressed, saying the whole thing looks amazing. The warehouse is filled with glowing light magic, floating hearts, swords, and even little bunnies. Everyone agrees the whole scene feels magical. The adventurers can't believe their eyes as they look at the magic. The girl says she didn't know light magic could do things like this, and the guy thinks it looks exactly like a gemstone. Everyone is in such a good mood that one of the men picks up a kid, cheering and telling them all that they're doing an amazing job. Watching the kids and the adults celebrate together makes Lilyrus feel all warm inside. She thinks to herself about how everyone here is such a good person. She turns to Red and tells him he needs to step up and give the kids even more praise for what they've done. But Red is just staring at the display, saying the whole thing is truly incredible. He asks Alice if this contest was actually her idea, and she tells him it was. He gives her a look of total respect, admitting he never could have come up with something like this, and saying her idea is definitely worthy of a medal. Lilyrus gets a bit quiet, thinking back to her past life where she grew up seeing how beautiful light can really be. So she realizes that people in this world usually think light magic is pretty worthless, making it totally natural that he wouldn't think of using it for art. Suddenly, Alfred leans in way too close to her face. He puts a hand on her head and gives her a soft thank you. The move catches her completely off guard, making her blush and tell him to cut it out, while he just teases her by asking if her heart is racing. Red steps up and tells the whole group they did some solid work on the contest. He keeps the compliments coming, telling the kids he's honestly shocked they could pull off something so amazing. Alice is still a bit flustered in the background, but the kids and Martha are just glowing. They look so happy and proud to be recognized like this. Red points a finger up and tells them that since this is a real contest, he's going to announce the winner of the official Guild Masters Award. One of the kids looks a bit confused and asks what a Guild Masters Award even is, so Red breaks it down for them, explaining that it just means they're giving out prizes for the absolute coolest stuff they made. He leans over to Alice and tells her to check this out, then he looks over all the glowing art on the walls, admitting everything is pretty magnificent, but one thing stands out. He picks up a sword made of light, saying it's truly exceptional and even jokes that he feels like he could slay any monster with it. One of the boys nearly loses it, pointing at himself and yelling that the sword is actually the one he made. Red hands over the Guild Masters Award to the kid who made the sword, telling him congratulations as he passes the prize over. The other kids crowd around to get a look, losing it over how cool the medal is while they shout about how amazing it looks. Martha is just as hyped, telling the boy how lucky he is and begging him to let her see the award up close. Red moves things right along, raising his hand to announce that they're about to hand out the Alice Award next. Everyone looks pretty surprised that there's more, but Alice just smiles and tells them she never said there was only one award. She hands the next prize to Sarah for making the cute bunny, giving her a big congratulations as the girl's face lights up. The fun keeps going as Red points out John, telling everyone that the big guy is going to be the one picking the next winner. John takes a second to think before pointing at a light art piece of some meat, saying he wants that one, which makes the kid who made it celebrate. Watching all the prizes go out, Red leans in and asks Alice if she actually has enough of these medals to give to everyone. Alice doesn't even blink, telling him that of course she does, especially since they managed to pull all of this off in just one day. Lilyrus looks over at the group with a big smile, asking Red if he doesn't think everyone deserves to be recognized. Red stops for a second as it clicks, admitting that she's totally right about that, and he mentions how it looks like they're running low on awards, so he's going to head upstairs to call down some more people. Lilyrus watches him go, telling him it's really thoughtful of him to do that as the rest of the guild keeps checking out the art, like this one adventurer who can't get over how much she likes a certain constellation drawing. Nearby, people are noticing the details, saying how clever it was to position the light to project right onto the ceiling. A couple stands by a glowing heart, and the guy mentions how romantic it is to use lights for a confession like that. Another guy is just relieved, saying he's glad nobody else grabbed his personal favorite piece yet. While further down, a man is losing it over how a kid managed to set up so many light orbs in under 2 minutes. The kid just grins, explaining that it's all done with a paper drawing before telling his big brother to watch what he does next. The kid gestures at the wall and tells the lights to be gone, causing the grid of glowing orbs to shift as everyone watching loses it, with people shouting about how amazing it is and asking if he's really just copying a drawing from a piece of paper. Lilyrus stands there completely floored, thinking the kid is a total genius because she never would have thought of doing something like this. She starts imagining the future, thinking that if they have this technology, they might eventually build massive screens together. Her mind starts racing with ideas about projecting light paintings onto the night sky, maybe even showing off stuff from another world like dragons. Lilyrus just smiles to herself, thinking about how much fun that would be before looking over at Red. A woman nearby looks totally touched by the display, saying she can't believe she got to see something so wonderful. She walks up to Red and asks if he's got a minute, telling him she really wants to talk with him in private. Lilyrus gets super flustered all of a sudden, shouting back and asking what the big deal is. She tries to play it off, saying she only got caught up in the moment because of the magic, and because he actually called her his wife. Kai snaps Lilyrus out of her head, asking if they're finally finished for the day. She looks pretty surprised by the sudden question, but she quickly puts on a smile and tells everyone the quest is officially done and it's time to head home. Kai waves his hand and happily agrees, and then as Red walks off, there's a feeling that he's even more clueless about what's going on than anyone realized. Lilyrus walks along calmly, thinking to herself that she wouldn't really mind the situation either way. Nearby, the guys are just vibing. One of them says he's only there because he's a fan of the muscles, while the other promises not to butt into his favorite person's private life. Lilyrus starts getting caught up in her feelings again, just thinking about Red and wondering if he says those kinds of things to anyone else besides her. Right before Kai calls out to her to get her attention,